All right, everybody, welcome back. Last receiver video for this draft, video number 10. And again, we are down to the prospects that are fighting to get drafted at all. These guys could go one way or the other. Let's go ahead and start with Arian Smith, a guy who I suspect will get drafted because he played at Georgia. And he did good things at Georgia, too. So I think that's going to put him over the top. It's a little easier to get attention when you go to Georgia. So he's on the smaller side for sure. He's a smaller guy, but he is lightning fast and he's a good athlete and he's explosive. So there are some traits here that you cannot teach. ESPN actually thinks he'll be like a late fourth or early fifth round pick. The aggregate has him barely getting drafted. I think he'll be a little bit higher than this, though, 245. Had 800 yards last year, mostly as a big play threat. His speed should translate very well. He's a deadly deep threat. He was for that Georgia offense. You can also feed him short catches like screens, dump offs, that kind of stuff, bubble screens even maybe, and he can go do damage with that. He's got the explosiveness to make people miss in the open field. And even though he's small, his release package at the line of scrimmage is pretty good. So you put all those things together and you're like, wait a minute, I think we have an NFL player here. I think we have a guy that can find a way in the NFL. He's not a very good route runner. They're choppy, they're rounded. I do think he has the ability to improve, but to this point, I'm not that impressed. He does drop a lot of passes. He makes a lot of mistakes that he doesn't need to be making, so his head doesn't seem like it's always in the game. Their focus drops too, by the way. He lacks the strength to work through contact. So once you get physical with him, it's really hard for him to do much about it. And he's got a very limited route tree. He's going to be probably another one of these guys that is only a deep threat and yak threat. There's not going to be much intermediate stuff with him, but what is there is good enough to be valued. So pure deep threat, it's a little bit of yak stuff. He could improve into something more. Taking him for what he is right now, though, I don't mind taking him in the fifth round. I like this guy. I can see a clear and obvious use case that he should be good at. 4.3, 640 is going to play in the NFL. He's quick. He's explosive. There's reason to believe he can get better. It just needs to happen. So I like him more than the average. I would take him in the fifth round and not feel bad about it. So I have a feeling he's going to bump up a little bit by the time we get to the draft. I don't know if he'll get to the fifth. That's about where I would feel comfortable drafting him, though. Okay, we got, this is a little bit of a fan favorite here, Efton Chism III. Mostly I added him because people were asking me about him. Eastern Washington, so local. A lot of locals are familiar with him. 23 years old. 5'11", 200 pounds, so small, but not critically small. 200 pounds is actually not bad. PFF thinks he gets drafted. The aggregate thinks he barely gets drafted. The other big boards either didn't have him or didn't have him in the top 300. Very productive the last 2 years, almost 2,300 yards, almost 210 catches, 21 touchdowns. And it's so easy to understand what he is, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure out Chism's game. He is a pure slot receiver. He's very good at running routes, very good at finding ways to get open. He's not fast, but he's quick. So he can find little ways to spring open against man coverage. He's got good hands, too. His hands are good. He understands how to run routes. He understands how to shift gears, understands how to really cut them sharply. He understands how to plant and change direction. And he was a guy that made a lot of plays in the short, intermediate, and deep areas of the field. So Efton Chism III, it's very easy to figure this guy out. He is the heir apparent to Cooper Kupp, except just not as good for assorted reasons, but he is the Cooper Kupp comp. Now, just because he reminds you of Cooper Kupp doesn't mean he will be. I am sure that he will have issues against NFL defensive backs. I don't think he has the speed to be the deep threat that he was at Eastern Washington. His deep threat speed is just not there. and I don't think that part of his game translates. And unlike other standout slot guys, guys like JSN, guys like Cooper Kupp, guys like Amon-Ra, he's just not big enough to stand out. He's big enough to do what he does, but what he does is not that fun. What he does is not that fun compared to other players. He's so clearly defined as a pure slot that just kind of goes about his business. It's kind of a John Ursua type thing, right? Where he's going to try really hard, he's going to maximize his potential, but there's a very low ceiling here. So, scrappy slot, limited talent, but I can't really go any further than a 6th round pick. I think he'll do some stuff as a special teamer, and he'll be decent depth, but I can't elevate him further than that at the moment. Just not enough on the table. I feel like there are like 5 or 6 players like Chism in every draft class, honestly. Jaylin Lane of Vatech, Virginia Tech, the Hokies, 23 years old. Another smaller but very athletic player. He's 5'10", 191, but he's got big hands. Arm length is actually passable, and he can fly 4.34. He's got big explosiveness, man. Big explosiveness. 11-foot broad. 3-cone was great. Good 20-yard shuttle. He cranked it out at that combine. Guy's a freak athlete. Couple big boards have him going in the top 200. CBS has him getting drafted too. The aggregate has him barely getting drafted. You're looking at about 1,000 yards over the last 2 seasons. 80 catches, 8 touchdowns. Not huge production, but decent production. And look, it's not about the production with him anyway. It's about how athletic he is. His speed is going to allow him to blow past even NFL defensive backs. It's going to be hard to keep up with him. He's a yak threat as well. You get the ball in his hands and tell him go do something, he's going to go do stuff. So yak threat is there, big time. Given how small he is, his scrappiness in making a play on the ball when it's in the air is remarkable. He's got a big catch radius, bigger than you would expect. At minimum, I think he'll be a really good punt returner and kick returner. He'll be able to do that stuff really well. Now, I do think he needs to improve as a route runner. He mostly depends on his talent to run good routes, if that makes sense, right? He depends on his speed and agility and explosiveness. He needs more nuance in his route running, like gear shifting. Spatial awareness is forgettable. Doesn't fight through contact as desired. He's not a very physical player. Doesn't really have a good release package. So playing outside is going to be hard. And for some reason, even though he's super talented, he never produced at a high level. So tremendous potential. I mean, there are first-round receivers that don't have this package of talent. There just are. So the juice is totally worth the squeeze, but there's some squeezing to do. I will definitely regret using a 4th-round pick on him, a late 4th-rounder, but I'll do it. Like, bring it on. Bring on the hate. I'll use a late 4th-round pick on this guy and try to figure it out, knowing that at minimum I'm getting a freaky return man, and there is definitely something that he can do as a receiver, and it might be something really, really good. So give me the inhuman upside here. All right, I believe this is our last guy, LaJohntay Wester. LaJohntay Wester, another Buffalo, 23 years old. Small, very small. 163 pounds. That's a couple of biscuits ahead of Tez Johnson. Very short arms. Very small hands. This guy is tiny. Seems like the XFL might be in his future, the UFL or something. He does have NFL speed, 4.46. Good acceleration, but very little explosiveness, so it's mostly straight line speed. PFF has him getting drafted, so does CBS. The database has him barely hanging onto the edge here. Good production the last 2 years, over 2,000 yards. Actually, I think it's right around 2,100 yards. So the numbers are unimpeachable, but how's it going to work in the NFL? Like I said, he's got the speed. He can fly. It's not tremendous speed, but it's good speed. That's good enough to succeed in the NFL. The production is undeniable. He should be a good returner in the NFL as well. I think he'll be a good return man. Pretty good route runner. Not stellar, but I think his routes are fine. He's a good ball tracker. If you throw a deep shot up to him, he's got a real chance of finding it and going to get it. He's got that Tyler Lockett gene. And despite him being so small, he actually is able to play with a little bit of physicality. I have to ask how much of that translates to the NFL, but what I'm trying to say is I guess he has that dog in him. I just can't imagine a guy this small lasting in the NFL. He's going to crumple. Like, how can he not? How does he last in this league at this size? Hard to imagine. His hands are not that good either, by the way. Change of direction skills, doesn't really have that. So route running at a higher level is probably like he's an okay route runner, but I don't think he'll ever be a great one. And it's kind of weird. He's almost certainly only going to be able to play in the slot at the NFL, but I feel like his best assets are when he's running downfield. So it doesn't really fit the typical use case for a slot. Slot receivers can run downfield, but not like that. So, weird player. Definitely benefited from Colorado's offense a lot. I can't imagine him being much more than a returner in the NFL, and that's just until he breaks. So, 7th rounder would be fine for special team stuff. I'm not spending anything more than that on him, though. So, that's it. That's every receiver. That was a lot. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think. I know today wasn't the most exciting day because we were dealing exclusively with day 3 guys, but tomorrow is a new position and we're moving on to new prospects. See you guys soon.